Welcome everyone to LuchaWorld Podcast episode number 64. Fredo here flying solo. Kurt is on assignment. We have a lot to talk about this week, so I figured we should do a podcast, and by we I mean myself, since I just thought of this right after, actually in between Informa and Lucha Underground, when I realized half the time when we start talking about Lucha Underground, I forget half of the show by the time we're recording the podcast. It's kind of been easier to remember now that we're doing that I'm also part of the Lucha Talk, so it's not it's not as difficult to remember all that stuff. As far as this past Wednesday, a lot of news came out from CMLL. A lot of it we already knew ahead of time, which is typical with CMLL press conferences. I think a couple hours before the press conference, they posted the lineup for next Tuesday's show. So all of us online already knew that Drone, a new luchador, was going to debut on the October 18th show. But we didn't know who it was, what he looked like, and he ended up showing up at the CMLL press conference. He kind of had a look that reminded me a bit of the Blue Blazer. But I don't know. He didn't have a lot to say other than his weight, his height, and he's from the north. His voice was very deep. It sounded a little bit like Pulvera, but it definitely isn't Pulvera, because Pulvera is busy training police officers right now. And also his features were very different. It's possible Drone could be somebody that was in CML before they started CML Informa. So we probably would have to go through old interviews to see if it's somebody who was there before that. It could be somebody new. I guess we'll have to wait and see in next Tuesday. But that's really the big news from the press conference. The fact that they debuted, they just decided to debut a guy that hopefully he's good. They put him in with three Rudos that at least might actually make him look good, in Hechicero definitely will make him look good, or expose him, depending on how good or bad Drone is. Misterioso Jr.'s okay, and Sagrado's pretty good. So that should be an interesting debut. Also at this show, at the press conference, they announced Angel de Oro, Fuego, and Titan were heading to New Japan Pro Wrestling for their Super Junior Tag Tournament. Angel de Oro is also going to be in ROH this weekend. They asked him about his opponents for Ring of Honors. I think he's wrestling on the second night, he's wrestling Kamatachi, so he knew who that was. The first match, he's in a four-way match. Kamatachi is in that match also, but Angel de Oro did not know who ACH was, and he definitely didn't know who, I think it was Nick Jackson from the Young Bucks. He definitely did not know who that was, although I'm sure he might know who the Young Bucks are. Probably doesn't know them by name. That should be interesting. I think a lot of people were asking about Angel de Oro and Ring of Honor. I think he'll do fine. He's somebody who's not going to be. He's not going to blow you away if you've been watching a ton of lucha. But if it's the first time you've watched Angel de Oro, he does enough where you're going to be impressed with, especially with his finisher, La Mecedora, and all that stuff. And it's a four-way match, so I have a feeling it's going to be better than the Cruiserweight four-way match that was on Raw a few weeks ago. Fuego will be teaming with Taguchi as part of the Super Junior Tag Tournament. That's his regular dance partner in New Japan Pro Wrestling. It's gonna suck because they on New Japan World, they mute his music, so we're basically just gonna see Fuego dancing to nothing, basically. Angel de Oro will be teaming with Titan in that tag tournament. Hopefully they'll do a lot better than most luchadors do in these tournaments. Although Volador Jr. this past Best of the Super Junior did really well actually. Also at the press conference, they announced the Dia de los Muertos shows being on October 28th, October 30th, and November 1st. They decided to dump the October 25th show. The November 1st show is also going to feature Rey Bucanero defending his title against the winner of a 12-man Torneo Cibernetico that's going to be held on October 25th. The 12 guys that are going to be in that tournament, I think they had Vangelis, Stuka Jr., Valiente, and I'm blanking on who the fourth guy was on the show. But there's good there's this it's the typical group of guys that are in these tournaments. Hopefully this is the plan is to have Rey Bucanero drop the belt, just because I think it's time for somebody else to hold. Although, with CMLL, there's so many belts that really doesn't. I think it's just basically just a place for the next year's Universal tournament. So it really, to me, it doesn't really matter who holds the belt or whatever. I can't imagine it being anybody different from who he's faced in the past. So I'm guessing it's either going to be Stuka Jr. or Valiente again. It won't be a Rudo. There's a couple of guys in the match that already hold titles. I can't imagine them going with either one of those guys. Let me see what else is going on. They also had Ultimo Guerrero and Atlantis talking about the Universal tournament. Atlantis couldn't remember. Atlantis has no idea who's going to be in Block B. Ultimo Guerrero did a better job of remembering who's in his block. They did remember to add Rey Cometa to Block A. They removed Cavernario. But the fact that they couldn't remember Rey Cometa being in this tournament pretty much means he has 0 odds of winning this. I would be shocked if he won. If he wins, you guys can write to me and call me out on it and tell me just tell me how wrong I was about this. I basically have Rey Cometa as the least likely guy to win that the first block, which is happening this Friday for the Universal tournament. I have him 8th overall. He might not be the first one eliminated, but I don't think he has a good shot of winning. I have Shocker 7th, 6th Valiente, 5th Negro Casas, just because I can't. Negro Casas in these tournaments usually doesn't even last beyond 3 minutes in them lately. 4th, I have Maximo, Sexy. 3rd, I could see Mephisto winning, depending if Volador Jr. wins Block B or if it's a technical that wins. I could see him winning. I have Mystico going 2nd, depending on who wins Block B. And Ultimo Guerrero 1st, just because he could go against any... there's so many guys from Block B that he could face. Volador Jr., Atlantis. There's more of a variety. Same thing with Mephisto. I think that was it for the press conference news. They didn't really have a lot to say. They brought out some of the characters that are part of the Dia de los Muertos show. They announced that there's going to be a Diosa. They gave out the Aztec name, which I'm not even going to bother saying. She's apparently, all we know is that she's going to be someone that they want to be sexy. I don't know what they mean. It could be an Edecan, it could be a luchadora. They didn't really specify what it was going to be at this time. They also mentioned in CML Informa that the little mini character, La Cuica, which was actually, I think, Zacarias El Perico, painted up to look like a skeleton. He's going to be a full-time character and as part of this going on CML from now on. I think they're planning on. I'm not sure about the other characters, but I do know that the Cuica is definitely going to be a regular character now. I don't know what this means, if that's the end of Zacarias El Perico or if they're going to bring in, because they usually have more than one Cuica at these Dia de los Muertos events. So it could be one of the other ones. It could be Mije. Mije hasn't been around lately, so we don't know what's going on with that. I would like to know what's going on with Mije. If anybody can let me know, maybe contact Cranio and ask him what's going on with Mije. I'm Facebook friends with him. I should probably just send him a message and ask him what's going on. I'll probably do that. That'll be one of my 100 things I should do before the playoff game starts today. Last Friday's show, really good show. I thought Volador Jr. versus Barbaro Cavernario for the NWA historic welterweight title was great. That's been a really great feud. Is it too short of a feud to call it feud of the year for this year because it's been really good. I hope I was hoping that when they had Barbaro Cavernario in the Universal tournament, that they would have set up Barbaro Cavernario versus Volador Jr. for the I think it's the 28th. I was hoping that would have been like the third match in this series and maybe led to something else down the road. Maybe their hair match for Dos Leyendas. But I'm guessing that they realized the mistake they made with by not having Rey Cometa in the tournament, so they took him down. So, but getting back to that match with Volador Jr. versus Barbaro Cavernario, really good match. I thought it was very different from the previous match with Cavernario doing being more of a Rudo, doing a lot more being more on the offensive, attacking Volador Jr. Volador selling more. Barbaro Cavernario did his 3 planchas, which I thought were great. He did one off the top, his regular corner top rope to the floor plancha. Then he did one on the ramp, and then he did one off the stage onto Volador Jr. I thought that was great. I wish Claro Sports would figure out why or at least repost the video on their website, because the last couple of weeks their feed has been dying at the worst times. I mean, I don't mind if it dies during the opening match when nobody really gives a fuck about the minis or if it's Leono and Akuma or whoever the random trio guys are going to be in the match, or the women or anything. But when it happens in the biggest match of the night, I really wish they would actually repost the complete video so we can at least watch the finish or whatever part we're missing. This is the second time in the last couple of weeks this has happened. It happened with the Rey del Aire Torneo Cibernético. So hopefully they get their shit together at some point on that. The other good match on this card was the second match. Okumura teamed up with Puma and Tiger versus Hombre Bala Jr., Soberano Jr., and Star Jr. Great match. Puma and Tiger are amazing. I think I mentioned this on Lucha Talk, and I mentioned it on Twitter. I don't think people realize how good Puma could be. I don't even know if he realizes how good he could be. He has a great look. I think he could be Pentagon Junior level on the indie circuit. Unfortunately, I don't know if it's going to take somebody booking him and realizing, hey, this guy's really good. And the CMLL guys, for some reason, the US indie promoters are really just into the Lucha Underground guys, so they know who Pentagon Jr. is. And really, it's mostly because they've been in PWG and PWG opening the doors for those guys. Because, I mean, when we spoke to Jeff Cobb, he's getting more bookings because of his appearances in PWG than he is in from Lucha Underground. But Puma would be really good on the indie circuit. Tiger's really good. Like I said on Tiger, I mentioned on Lucha Talk that I think he's a little more behind on Puma, because I think that time he was with TRT, it kind of stunted his growth on being able to work the modern style with that. Whereas Puma worked with Rey Cometa, he's working with Fuego, all these other, the high flying guys, more of the high flying guys. So whereas Tiger was in these really weird random trios matches with Terrible, sometimes Rey Bucanero, sometimes Vangelis, sometimes somebody else. The Técnico trio of Hombre Bala Jr., Soberano Jr., Star Jr., this should be the semi-main event trio on every Tuesday show in Arena Mexico. I don't know why they're holding back on this stuff. I mean, the show's called Martes de Nuevos Valores. These three guys are really good. Hombre Bala Jr. is probably the one that's the more polished of the three, as far as overall skill in the ring. Soberano Jr., I think he's gotten a little heavier. He looks a little more, his body, his physique looks a little more like he's finally getting a little more meat on his bones. He doesn't look as skinny as he used to. I think he's the star of this group of these three guys. Star Jr., I mean, I'm surprised he's not higher on the cards considering how much Tirantes was putting him over when he was in Busca de un Ídolo. But those five guys, Okumura, he's a throw-in. Puma and Tiger really, if they really want to do something, they really should have Hechicero be the regular trio partner. Maybe Puma and Tiger can convince Hechicero and that little new character like Cuica If I was them, I would suggest that to CML and have them become a regular trio, about as irregular as you can be in CMLL, because they don't really keep trios together on every show, anyways. Um, yeah, that was a really great match. Definitely go out of your way to watch that. Um, the main event of that show was actually the Dinastia Muñoz, Rush, Místico, and Dragon Lee teaming up. I think this was the first time they teamed up in CML for Arena Mexico. Um, they were in a trios match, actually pretty good. They did this really cool finish where Místico went for this dive onto Euphoria, but you see Euphoria move out of the way, and Místico falls right onto the floor, and he starts selling a knee injury. And I mean, if you don't know that he was just selling it and went based off his past history, you would have been really worried about him. But I mean, as you saw, it set up something else. There's this really cool picture that Alexis Salazar took, where you see Euphoria moving away from the dive. So you just see him moving forward and Místico just doing his dive. Really cool photo. Definitely you should go look at that. So basically, Rush was in there with Ultimo Girl. La Máscara shows up wearing a sombra mask, distracts Tirantes, and Rush ends up fouling Ultimo Girl and getting the win. La Máscara takes off the sombra mask to reveal that he's really La Máscara. Cool finish. I think Dragon Lee after the match was very upset at Rush for accepting the help from La Máscara. I think they're going to reunite the Ingobernables at some point. I really wish they would just dump Pure Oath, but at this point, I think Rush is really committed to having Pure Oath be a part of the trio. It's too bad Rey Escorpion isn't in it, and I don't think Rey Escorpion and La Máscara would be a good combination based off of what they basically called each other during Informa shows. But anybody else, I mean, I would prefer somebody younger, better than Pure Oath, but I mean, that's the trio they're going to go with, I guess. Yeah, definitely check out that show, this past Friday show. Really good. Top to bottom, there's a couple of matches that weren't really great, but there were at least definitely 4 matches that I thought I definitely recommend were good. Good, anywhere between good and great. Other CML news, that's basically it for CML, because I think that's... I refuse to watch the Puebla and Tuesday, the Monday, Tuesday shows. I saw the reaction to the Tuesday main event where Rush and Diamante Azul had their singles match, which CML's Twitter account called a dream match. It looked horrible. I have no intention. I don't think I'm gonna watch that at all. The finish looked horrible. That entire show, I just can't get into those two shows. Actually, I'll probably watch it when it airs on LA TV, which will be like a 15-minute clip version of that match. I don't know how long that match was. Those of you who watched it, maybe it was longer than that. If anything that's helped watching the Tuesday shows on LA TV is that they're short. It's only 1 hour, and even like when they clip it down to like four matches on a 1 hour show, it is way better than watching the 2.5 hour shows on Tuesday. I'm sorry, I just can't get into that. Puebla, I don't know what's going on with Puebla. That show, sometimes it's really good, but lately it's just been really bad. The only time I do enjoy the Tuesday shows when they have the really good singles matches. I probably will watch this Tuesday because Drone is debuting, and like I said, I'm really excited about Drone's debut. I feel this is going to be the start of a new change for Tuesday shows. Drone is going to make me watch these shows going forward. Unless he sucks, then I will change my mind and I will pretty much delete this episode of LuchaWorld Podcast, episode number 64. I will delete it if he's awful. I'm hoping he's not. Let's see what else is going on with CML. The Dinamitas are coming back on this Friday. How excited is everyone? Looking forward to seeing the Dinamitas again. I don't know how excited I can get. It's really, I don't get it. They looked horrible on that Friday show. They can't look any better this Friday, so I have no idea what they're doing with that. AAA news. The big news from AAA. basically is a bunch of weird stories that are just kind of revolving around AAA's name, not really involving AAA for some. I mean, they are involving AAA people, but it's not really. It's more about the individuals and themselves. This past week, there was a news report. It was actually this last Friday. There was a news report by a Televisa news show called Diez en Punto with Denise Marker, where they were talking about La Parka. And they talked about this La Parka being one of the big stars of the 90s. And now he was in prison for kidnapping and robbery. So he's been in prison. He's been sentenced to 32 years in prison. So they went and sent a couple of reporters to interview this guy. The man claiming to be La Parka's name was Victor Franco Cruz. For those wondering who Victor Franco Cruz is, it is not La Parka, because the Parka they were talking about on this news show was actually Adolfo Tapia Ibarra, who currently wrestles as LA Park. So they aired clips of the LA Park, of the La Parka of the 90s, who was LA Park. Everybody called them out on it. LA Park posted a video complaining about them having this fake story about that guy never being La Parka. AAA said that he wasn't La Parka. The only La Parka in their world was the current La Parka, who is in AAA, not the LA Park, who they've had an on and off relationship since the mid 90s. So all these people are complaining about the fake La Parka and how it's not him. All the fans are complaining. They're sending these negative, like, these tweets towards to the Denise Marker Twitter feed. Not only did whoever was handling it, because obviously it wasn't her handling her Twitter feed, it's probably somebody else handling it. Kept tweeting out the news report, and people kept complaining and telling them that they were wrong. They finally removed I think the second time they retweeted it, they took that one down. The two news reporters, one of the news reporters posted on Twitter that he actually was not referring to the LA Park from the 90s or La Parka from who was the second Parka right after LA Park. I mean, he was La Parka Jr. at one point. So basically, there was no gap between LA Park and La Parka currently in AAA. So this guy was claiming that the La Parka he spoke to that was in prison was basically La Parka that AAA had run a casting call for to have a new La Parka. So they claimed that somewhere between 1996 and 1999, AAA had this casting. So for the new La Parka. So AAA said that wasn't true. So then they announced Denise Marker had to do a new report. They did a new report on this past Monday, where they corrected it, and they mentioned how it wasn't LA Park who was in prison. They went to LA Park's house. They sent a reporter to LA Park's house. They sent a reporter to La Parka, to the AAA offices to interview La Parka. Basically, with what they aired this time was Victor Franco Cruz telling the story about him going to a casting call with AAA to become and where he won the right to be La Parka, which wasn't true. And I don't think these reporters are going to bother correcting that, because AAA was stupid enough not to correct them on this, because AAA, basically what they told them was that it's possible that this guy and La Parka, they said it through La Parka, where La Parka said that maybe this guy was told to be La Parka on an indie show by shady indie promoters. Because according to La Parka, now this is where the hilarity in all this story is. La Parka said, "Hey, there's a lot of shady promoters that will promote a wrestler using the La Parka, and it's happened in the past with Octagon and Mascara Sagrada, where they've used fake guys as these characters on shows. And the hilarity in this is AAA has done this, so this is where it's one of those pot calling kettle type of deals. So basically the story ends up being that Victor Franco Cruz was not La Parka at any point. AAA kind of corrected it, but didn't really go out of its way to like make these guys expose the news reporters for being wrong. LA Park wants everybody to forget about this story, so this is really the last time I hope we have to hear from about this. Although I doubt it, because if you've heard countless stories of wrestlers of people pretending to be wrestlers, these happen constantly. It's not just in Mexico; it happens often in the U.S. So I think we're going to hear more of these at some point, and hopefully this is over with. Speaking of another person that's been on the news lately, Alberto. The latest on Alberto El Patron. He is now Alberto El Presidente, as he was announced as the president of Combate Americas, which is an MMA group. He had a previous relationship with this group. It was really the promotion, the MMA group that everybody just assumed he was going to be a part of when he held that press conference at Hooters. And by the way, we really have to do more press conferences at Hooters. If you're not doing a CML in press conference but you're a lucha promotion, do your press conferences at Hooters. It really gets more people to talk about your press conferences. So Alberto said he was going to be the president of this MMA group. He talked about he did a second press conference about this. He also talked about continuing to wrestle for at least through 2018, which was what he said when he first announced that he was doing the 60 dates per year, which pretty much that's what he's doing. He also mentioned TMZ interviewed him afterwards, and he talked more about the knife incident. Which now, if you're following this story, I think we're on the 5th or 6th version of this incident where he basically said some drunk guy disrespected Paige, and he had to defend her honor. I think this is all we're going to get to about this incident. I don't really care. I don't really think I don't think we're going to know the full story about this. There was no police report written. I mean, there's been Ryan Satin from Pro Wrestling Sheet and Dave Meltzer from Wrestling Observer both said they contacted the San Antonio Police Department, and neither one of them could get a confirmation on there being a police report on this incident. So I think we could just move on from this. Also, Alberto said he's been in talks with Ring of Honor for a few dates to work for them. That's an interesting situation because Alberto also said he still has a few dates to work with AAA. I don't know how how Ring of Honor is gonna do this, because they are aligned with CMLL and New Japan Pro Wrestling. So I'm not sure if there's going to be issues from CMLL concerning this. I don't think they're really going to care if Alberto. I mean, they allowed their talent to work the Crash show with Alberto on it, so I'm guessing they don't really care. The other promotion that Alberto mentioned possibly working with was TNA, but he said it really depends on the money. And I just checked Twitter earlier before doing this podcast, and I saw that Billy Corgan, I think he's suing Dixie Carter and TNA. So I don't know where that's going. I don't know what's going on with that whole situation. I wish Billy Corgan would have talked to somebody before really wanting to buy TNA. I'm sure there's plenty of places he could have. I mean, really, I don't know. I know Chris Zellner and all these guys online are trying to convince me that about the TV deals and all that. I'm sorry, they're on Pop. I barely remember when they're on, and I have the channel. I don't really see the point. I mean, can he come up with his? I mean, this is Billy Corgan. He's got to know a few people in Hollywood who could actually back a show. I don't get it. I don't really see the point of him. I mean, first of all, he really fucked up that other promotion, so that he supposedly he created. It does that. I don't even know if that promotion even exists nowadays. I just think it's stupid what he's doing. Billy, talk to somebody who knows about wrestling. Maybe we should do a scared straight for people who want to get into the wrestling business. I mean, get some old school people who've been in the wrestling business. You know, maybe get Conan to like Conan and Kurt would be an interesting guy to have on there. Tell these guys not to save their money and do something else, you know, because I don't know. The other AAA news: Jack Evans is off the Star Battle Japan show that's scheduled for later this month, and he was going to team up with Angelico against Masato Tanaka Nikuto Hidaka. That is a disappointment for me because that was really probably one of the two matches I was looking forward to watching. Now I don't know. I mean, who are they going to replace Jack Evans with? I mean, that's the other story. If it's Dave the Clown, I'm just going to quit watching AAA because it's ridiculous. La Hiedra replaced Fabi Apache on the show too. I don't know what that if there's more to that one. With Jack, I have a feeling it had to do with the interview that he did with Solo Wrestling in Spain. You know, when you want to be honest about stuff, at some point that's going to bite you in the ass, especially if you're still working for that promotion. So, I mean, that he had to know that. That's one of the things when you're going to interview somebody who's wrestling for a promotion. Like with us, we go to a lot of shows where there's a lot of Lucha Underground guys, and we usually won't interview them because we interviewed Thunder Rosa because she basically had we talked about Stardom and she was going to run I think it ended up being that her husband might have been the one that was running the Sabotage show that happened this past week. She had a little more to talk. We wanted to know more about like how she got into the business and stuff like that. But like when we go to shows, we see a lot of these guys, and it's like when the main topic you have with them is Lucha Underground. You just don't. I mean, there's so much you have to tiptoe around with Lucha Underground that I don't see the point in like getting them into trouble over some little interview that's not going to be heard by a bunch of people, or seen by a lot of people. With Jack, I think that I don't know. I mean, he probably the direction that interview was going with. As soon as they asked him about Conan, you know he was going downhill after that. Speaking of Conan, I think that's the other thing. Jack was talking about when he was talking about Conan. He mentioned how Conan leaving hurts the TV show, how it's gotten worse, and how the talent in AAA doesn't have someone that they could go to pass on their opinions or thoughts or frustrations concerning the promotion. I think the biggest thing that's really missing out now with AAA with Conan gone is probably the fact that they're really not. I mean, these guys are leaving, and they're not getting anybody to replace them at their level, or even like guys who you think are promising up and coming talent. I mean, who's really joined AAA since Conan's left? Dave the Clown, Big Mommy. That's about it. I mean, that's basically all I could think of that's joined AAA since he's left. It's you people forget that Conan kind of brought in Phoenix, Pentagon Jr. You might not like Conan. I don't know. You might not like Conan. Some of you may not like Conan. Some of you may like him. But the one thing I will say is that if he's one of the few guys who will actually watch and keep up with the product and watch talent and know what he's somebody like if you tell him, hey, go check out this guy so and so from an indie show, he will, like, if you send him the video, he will go out of his way to watch it, which is very uncommon with a lot of indie a lot of people in wrestling, not just indie but in overall in general. Like a lot of promoters and people in wrestling don't really like. I mean, you could send them a video and they won't watch it. Conan will. And I think that's really what's going to hurt AAA. And I think we're starting to see that now with the lineups that they're sending out lately. I mean, I think they have Dave the Clown working a semi-main event, I think, right now, which I have no idea what the Roldans are thinking with doing that. Um, Conan also just destroyed La Parka AAA on his most recent podcast, Boom. I definitely think you should listen to that. Uh, so I don't want to say a lot of stuff that he said because a lot of the stuff kind of crosses the line between what's the business and beyond that. But he really he talked about La Parka being a very a politician, very much throwing. He pretty much talked about how La Parka didn't let Drago move up the card, how he's buried a lot of guys in the promotion. He buried one of the storylines that he was going to be a part of, because that he wasn't a part of, but he wanted to be a part of. Well, actually, I think he mentioned something about how when they put Drago with him, he kind of wanted to. He switched the storyline over so that he didn't have to have Drago as part of it, because to La Parka he didn't know who was Drago, and I'm thinking, dude, come on, Drago has been around. I mean, I don't know, it's not like it's a new character and who is this guy? What? Yeah, it's a new character. Who is this guy? Drago has been around AAA for 10, 15, 16 years, probably as long as La Parka has been there. So it's like for him to do that, that just tells you the type of person he is. Conan kind of thought what La Parka's thoughts on Jack thinking he wasn't very good in the ring. He took him. First of all, La Parka took him the wrong way. It was actually it may have come off as a backhanded compliment, but really a lot of people think La Parka's horrible as a wrestler, but as an entertainer, he's been able to get he's been able to keep the La Parka character alive, whereas I mean, if you look at just the wrestling, I mean, there is no comparison between La Parka and LA Park. I mean, it's not even close. It's never been close. So, and you could tell from the time, from that one match that they had in AAA where LA Park just destroyed La Parka. Yeah, so that interview was really, that podcast with Conan was really, basically I think it was 30 minutes of Conan just ripping into La Parka. Definitely recommend listening to that. Lucha Underground, that was the other reason I wanted to do this podcast, because every time I do a podcast, whether it's Lucha Talk or this podcast or whatever else I might be doing, I completely forget what happened the previous week with Lucha Underground, because especially if it's not a great show. If it's a great show, I'm going to remember it for a lot longer than just a good to average show. The Observer, I should mention before I get to the TV show, The Observer mentioned Lucha Underground was planning on running live shows starting on October 23rd in Phoenix, October 30th in Houston, and November 5th in San Francisco. This I have no idea, because it seems kind of, what's today? Today's the 13th, and we haven't heard anything about this. I would think if you were going to run shows at these places, I mean, Phoenix is about 10 days away. Don't you want people to attend these shows? I mean, you got to have at least a month in advance for people to start thinking about making plans to attend these shows. I would think. I mean, I'm no genius or anything. I'm not a promoter or anything, but I would think you would want at least a few weeks for people to know that these shows are running in those cities. I'm guessing they're not going to happen. If they do, I'll apologize. I don't mind apologizing if I'm wrong. The TV show, a lot better than the previous week. I thought all the matches were okay. The first match I thought was okay, but the other two matches were good. Chavo Jr. was supposed to face Ray Horace in the main event, which I then complained on Twitter, and I think Lucha Underground might have seen it, where I said, didn't this happen? Didn't this match just happen last week? Why are we doing this again? So they, of course, took out. They ended up having a story. I guess they did that, but then they realized they should probably just announce that they were going to have a three-way match. More likely that was the reason. They had Chavo Jr. take out Ray Horace early on the show with like at least a dozen chair shots. I'm pretty sure. I should say Dragon Azteca Jr. I don't know why I wrote Ray Horace actually. See, this just tells you how bad the. And the funniest thing of the Dragon Azteca Jr. character, they had he was at his locker, and he was looking at an old poster with Chavo Senior versus Dragon Azteca Senior, which I should have remembered that was him. And I'm still used to him being Ray Horace. I'm sorry, he'll still be Ray Horace to me, as long as he's using that gimmick and he's at all these indie shows I end up attending, he'll be Ray Horace. Well, he got taken out by Chavo Jr. Rey Mysterio showed up late to check out to find Dragon Azteca Jr. knocked out. Chavo then went over to Dario Cueto's office and requested that now that Dragon Azteca Jr. was out with an injury, he should be the one facing he should face Pentagon Jr. so he could get revenge on Pentagon Jr. Ray Mysterio then shows up and tells Dario that he wants a match with Chavo for payback for what he did to Dragon Azteca Jr. So Dario decides that since Ray wants revenge on Chavo and Chavo wants revenge on Pentagon Jr., that he was going to make a three-way match and that would be the main event. We also got another clip of the Aztec Rabbit Tribe coming soon. I hope that replaces the police officer storyline, whatever the fuck that is. I mean, that whole thing, I'm not really into that. I think that's the one thing where they're losing me this season. The storylines are really the police story is just. I think that's even over the top for this wrestling show. And like I was saying, they had some really crazy ideas prior to that also. The first match on the card was Famous B teaming up with Dr. Wagner Jr. to beat Son of Havoc and Mascarita Sagrada. Mascarita Sagrada and Son of Havoc showed up. Son of Havoc was riding a motorcycle with Mascarita Sagrada in the sidecar. Match was okay for me. There were some people who said it was awful. It was short enough where I could. It didn't bother me as much. It was a match. Move on. Sexy Star beat Jack Evans. This match I actually thought was really good. Jack Evans looked amazing. He made Sexy Star look great. And I'm sorry, Lucha Underground fans. Sexy Star is awful. You can tell me I'm wrong, but you know what? I've watched Sexy Star wrestle since she was in Monterrey. She was awful then. She's awful now. You're not going to change my mind. Jack Evans made her look amazing. He did a lot of stuff that I think, this is the thing. Jack Evans was doing stuff where he has no problem making Sexy Star look good. In the previous match, Dr. Wagner Jr. had to do things to make Mascarita Sagrada look good that you definitely know Dr. Wagner Jr. would never do anywhere else. I mean, Dr. Wagner Jr. would never put over Mascarita Sagrada the way he did in this tag match for Lucha Underground. I mean, he wouldn't even want to be in a match with him. I mean, there's guys, I don't think Dr. Wagner Jr., if he was in Mexico or in the Indies, would even want to be in a match with Famous B, Son of Havoc, or Mascarita Sagrada if he knew they weren't considered at his level in Mexico. I mean, it's just the way he is. I mean, that's just the way he is. Back to this match, Jack Evans did really good. He was bumping all over the place for Sexy Star. He made her look like a legit badass, which was impressive. Jack bumping all over. I mean, I there were points where I thought he was going to kill himself, making sure this match was good. There was a lot of interference in the match. PJ Black and Johnny Mundo got involved. I think it was Aerostar, Drago, and Phoenix all got involved as well to help Sexy Star. Taya wasn't around. I don't know where she was during this. She should have been there to help her. Maybe she just doesn't want to help Jack Evans. Jack Evans ended up losing. But it was a lot better than I expected it to be. Kudos to Jack for that match. Sexy Star, I think the one thing that Lucha Underground has proven is that um, the right opponent in Lucha Underground has made Sexy Star look a lot better than she has ever looked in AAA. And she's also worked with people like Jack Evans and Mariposa. Her top two matches that I've seen in Lucha Underground are a guy and a gal who are going to make her look good. Whereas in Mexico, she's going to work with the Apache sisters, and the Apache sisters are not going to do that for Sexy Star. The main event, Pentagon Dark beat Chavo Guerrero Jr. and Rey Mysterio. Um, Pentagon Dark, I believe he submitted Rey. Actually, he took out Rey Mysterio with that pile driver. Um, Match was good, really good when Pentagon Dark and Rey Mysterio were in together. Chavo kind of dragged it down a few times. The finish of the match, the finish of the show was basically Chavo destroying Rey's knee with Pentagon Dark really not getting involved. So I guess we're setting up a Chavo versus Rey, another match. And I think that was basically the show. Oh, and they also announced that next week's show is going to have Mil Muertes versus Prince Puma, which should be great. So yeah, definitely this past week's show, if you haven't watched it, check it out. I thought it was pretty good. Next week's show, I'm really looking forward to seeing Mil Muertes versus Prince Puma. See, there's a match I will probably remember everything about for whenever we do the next podcast, be it Lucha Talk or this podcast. The other news, Elite had no show this week announced. As of right now, they have not announced a show for this week, and we're already on Thursday. So like I mentioned, when a couple of people were asking were wondering if there was going to be a show this week. I mentioned that this Friday, Rey Escorpion, Carístico, and LA Park were going to be in working for Cholo, Promociones Cholo de Tijuana, for their show in the Auditorio de Tijuana. So yeah, Cholo's a really cool guy. I actually when he met me, he thought I was a guy who was recording his show. But I've never recorded a show, and even if I did, I probably would have said no, just because the way he told me, the way he asked, I was worried that he thought I was like doing something that he didn't. Although I think from that point when he asked me, I think that was like in probably 2012, I think. From that point to now, there's so many people who attend shows, who record shows and post them, and the promoters are fine with it, that I don't think he would have minded. He would have been. I think he would have been okay with it. But yeah, he's been running some pretty good shows in Tijuana. He's the other guy who's running besides the Crash. He's the other guy who's really been running some good shows. That show has a mix of CMLL talent, some Tijuana locals. I'm not sure if there's going to be any LA guys on that show, but the Elite guys are going to be on that show. So when there was no show announced for Friday, I just assumed the Elite show was going to have that may have been the reason that Elite was gonna not run. But then you realize Elite, if those three guys weren't around for this Elite show, you basically would have had Blue Demon Jr. versus Extreme Tiger, probably. And then God only knows what the rest of the card would have looked like for a Friday show, especially if there were Friday shows already, if people were already planning, booked on other shows. The other news from Elite is that they did announce their November 4th show, although they changed the lineup already. I think days after putting up the first poster, they had to change they had to change it. Strongman was removed from the show, which is really sad. I'm very disappointed that Strongman isn't making his big return for Elite. I was looking forward to that. I would have started watching their TV show again if Strongman would have appeared, although I do plan on watching. I just haven't had time. This week I've been busy with work, and like I was saying, we're going to make some changes to the LuchaWorld podcast. I'll talk about that in a bit. But yeah, and this weekend I'm going to a wedding, so I'm probably not going to be getting caught up until next week. I also want to watch Héroes Inmortales just to see if it was really any better than what it looked like on paper. But back to Elite. Strongman wasn't on the show. Very disappointed, like I said. I'm still upset that Strongman still needs to get his win back on Prince Devitt. And for those who don't know who Prince Devitt is, it's Finn Balor in WWE. He deserves a rematch. He was robbed in that G1 Climax tournament. Strongman's shoulders were clearly not touching the mat. And I will go to my grave saying this. And the other match on this card, this is how crazy this card was. I mean, I'm guessing, and this match was also this match. They didn't make the announcement that this match was removed, but what they did for the second poster, they only announced the top 3 matches, and then they mentioned 4 other matches. But in the first poster, they had this match announced as I think the 3rd match on the card. Octagon teaming up with Extreme Tiger against Flamita and Fuerza Guerrera. And the first thing I thought was like, holy shit, that match, if that match happens, I do want to watch it. But apparently, I think from the looks of it, Flamita's photo on the poster was removed. So I'm guessing Flamita either turned it down or he might be doing something else that day. That match, there were a few people that said, well, Octagon and Flamita have been on shows together, but they haven't been in the same match together. So I don't know how that would have turned out. It's funny, you don't see Octagon's son. You guys can't see my air quotes. Octagon's son, quote, the air quotes, or as he's known in Elite, el hijo de los, what is it? El hijo del amo de los ocho ángulos. You don't see him in a lot of shows. So I don't know what the reviews have been on him. I think I'm gonna, like I said, next week I'm gonna go through and start watching all the Elite shows and Héroes Inmortales and just get caught up on all that stuff. I want to watch some IWRG matches. IWRG is posting their IWRG. It's so weird. I subscribe to all these YouTube channels, and really the ones that are constantly updated are the Cubs fan and Lucha TV and some of the non-Lucha YouTube channels I subscribe to. Oh, the other one that's always constantly updated is Rob Viper's YouTube channel with his cool music videos. He's posting all the Puebla stuff, the good era of Puebla when we actually looked forward to watching Puebla. I still remember getting those shows on DVD, and actually I remember telling Rob that I was getting Puebla, and we were actually excited about getting these shows, whereas now I don't think either one of us watches Puebla anymore. That just tells you how bad the Monday, Tuesday shows are. People don't realize it. Rob Viper and I, for years, talked about this, how great it would be if we could watch every single CMLL show. And I think maybe 2 years ago, maybe a year ago, Rob Viper was still saying that he was excited about seeing all these shows. CMLL has killed the spirit of Rob Viper with these Monday, Tuesday shows. I mean, the way they book these shows. I'm hoping someday that someone running CMLL will turn that around. I mean, hell, Cubs fan doesn't even watch the Tuesday shows sometimes now. That really tells you how bad these shows are. So I was checking out my YouTube subscriptions, and all of a sudden I see an IWRG show, a match on there. And, I thought it was Lucha TV because they've been posting complete IWRG matches. And wouldn't you know it, the IWRG Lucha YouTube channel is now updating. They haven't posted anything since 2013. And, maybe they got a strike or something from music. I mean, it's possible. I've already gone through, I think since I started my YouTube channel, I think I've had 2 strikes. One was I forgot that female wrestler. God damn, I think she was in WWE at one point, but she worked in Monterey. She does all that fetish wrestling. I forgot her name. She does fetish wrestling, and she struck one of the matches I had of hers in Monterey. So I had to go through, I think it's a 3-month process where you don't, or a 6-month process. It might be 6 months, where you can't post anything longer than 15 minutes. So I just said, fuck it, I'm not going to update then. And then last year, I think last August, I got a second strike. But they're all, if you get a strike within the years, that's when you if you get multiple strikes within a year, I think that's when you get in trouble. But if you get a strike every couple of years, you're fine. But the other strike I got was Samurai TV claimed one of the Apache's matches from Arceon. Only it wasn't. I don't think it was one of the Arceon Samurai TV matches. It was a match that actually I got off I think it was a commercial video. So I don't. Maybe they. I guess they felt they owned a claim to it. I was cool. I was fine with it. I mean, you lose that, big deal. I'm not I'm not posting that often. I'm not posting that many videos often enough to really worry about it. Yeah, so I saw the IWRG matches. I saw that they have some I saw they posted Imposible versus Heredero de Rey Mysterio, and I was thinking I should watch that, but I watched that. I was at that show where all three Rey Mysterios were here live, and I just don't know if I could sit through a Heredero de Rey Mysterio match, even if Imposible is really good. I'm definitely gonna watch the Black Terry Hijo del Diablo match and all those other matches. So I'll probably do a podcast where I just talk about that for like a full hour, just go through every match that I saw, and maybe throw in a couple of complaints about what else was there about AAA, whatever's going on with AAA, because AAA, something's going to happen with AAA at some point or CMLL. Yeah. So, getting back to the podcasting. So I mentioned there's a few changes we're doing with the podcast. I added the LuchaWorld Podcast to this podcast service called Podbean. You could go and look at it. They're archiving all the shows. It's luchaworld.podbean.com. They have an RSS feed. I'm adding the podcast interviews, everything on there. I'm gonna keep the LuchaWorld Podcast RSS feed separate for those of you who just want to hear the podcast and don't want to deal with that with the interviews and all that stuff. You guys can, if you guys don't want that stuff. But on the Podbean web page, you'll get the interviews, you'll get the LuchaWorld Podcast, and Kurt and I have been talking about possibly doing a more of a historical type podcast. I brought it up like a couple of months ago, because as many of you who listen to the show, Kurt doesn't really watch Lucha Underground and a lot of the current wrestling. He's not going to watch AAA anyway, so I don't feel compelled forcing him to watch it, especially right now with the situation. I mean, I'm okay if he watches the Friday CMLL show and maybe catches Puebla or a Tuesday taping or whatever, or we attend a show, a live show, and we can talk about that or interviews and stuff like that. But where I think we could probably help or do more is probably do more of a historical podcast. I really want to. Don't tell Kurt this, but I really want to. Hopefully, he'll bring that Titanes en el Ring book at some point, and maybe I'll look through it, and we'll probably do a couple of podcasts dedicated to Titanes en el Ring. I kind of want to do maybe some podcasts covering one specific luchador, like from the past. I really want to do one on Cavernario Galindo. I know Kurt's been researching Charo Aguayo. He researched a couple of different other luchadors from the past. I mean, these are luchadors from the past that are stuff that I haven't had time to look for. What else was I gonna bring up? There's something else about the website that I was gonna bring up. Yeah, so yeah, the historical podcast we're gonna since that also the other reason I'm keeping the iTunes feed with the current RSS feed is when I start doing the content, that content's protected. So when it shows up on the Podbean account, I'm not sure how it would pop up on iTunes. I don't know if that would cause an issue with iTunes, because with iTunes you can't put anything that's paid. You can't put paid content. So I think I'm going to keep this separate, especially because it's a pain in I was reading up how to change your RSS feed for iTunes, and it just fucking annoyed it just blew my mind how it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. I mean, it probably is. I don't know, but it just can't. The terminology they were using just was way above my head. I think I'll keep the also with Podbean. If you have an iPhone or an Apple, I guess an iPhone or an iPad or an iPod. Do they even make iPods nowadays? or if you have a something for that uses Google Play, there's an app for the show now in the Apple Store, the Apple App Store, and on Google Play. You could download it. It'll have all the shows. I don't know because I haven't checked, but if you create an account with Podbean, you'll be able to. And if you decide to sign up for the premium content or whatever that we decide to add, I'm not saying that's 100% happening because Lord knows we have no idea what's going on with I mean, this past week, I was already planning on doing this, and then I started doing other stuff. So it's like my schedule is constantly changing. But I think right now that's the plan. If you download the app, it'll give you and you're logged into your account. It'll let you download or listen to all the shows. So hopefully that will be something to look forward to. My thinking is that Kurt's gonna still do the LuchaWorld podcast and do the historical podcast, but he's probably just gonna switch back and forth doing the shows, because there's gonna be some historical shows where I think I really kind of want to do maybe a rundown on the Lucha, go through a Lucha magazine, kind of like what Chris Zellner and Bix do with Between the Sheets. Although I'm not going to do a 4-hour podcast. That's definitely not the plan. But maybe just go through a boxy lucha from 1965 or something, and just go through it and maybe talk about it. Maybe we find some information on some other stuff that was going on around that time. Do that. And like I said, and then do some bios. Like I was saying with Kurt doing the Charo Aguayo stuff, I've been doing some research on Cavernario Galindo. I stumbled into an interview with Negro Navarro, and that's something else I really want to do. I really want to do something on Negro Navarro. Maybe do something on some of the other guys that it's not just going to be guys from the past, but maybe some current guys. Just give you a rundown on their careers and stuff like that. Also, maybe do something on a specific show, like When Worlds Collide, the show with Viano 3 versus Atlantis, which, by the way, J.R. Goldberg did a really cool article on Voices of Wrestling that I recommend people read. It's basically more about the match itself, whereas I think if we do a podcast dedicated to that card, it would probably focus more on how they got to the Viano 3 Atlantis match, because that feud went on for a full year, something like that. Maybe do a podcast dedicated to the Apache family feud. I think that's something I would really like to do. Stuff like that. I think that's something that I think people would enjoy. It might not fit into what the LuchaWorld podcast, this regular news type of show would be, because I think this podcast is more geared towards fans that are currently watching, maybe getting fans to get into current lucha, and then maybe they get into the current lucha, and maybe they see Drago, and they're like, "Hey, I want to know who is this Drago?" And on this other podcast, maybe we have a historical podcast on Drago and tell you about his time as Alan, as part of the Barrio Boys, as Gato Eveready, which Kurt and I are still very upset about, that Gato Eveready was pulled, and we made sure and we told Conan and Pimpinella about this. I think we may have told Dorian Roldan about this too, how upset we are about them cutting the cord on Gato Eveready. Stuff like that. I think that's something that I think you could expect. I think the next week's show we'll probably do another LuchaWorld podcast. I think I'm leaning towards doing this weekly. I don't know. Every other week, maybe have Kurt do this podcast, or maybe whenever he has time to do it. Like I said, Kurt's always busy. I think there's enough. I think when we first started this podcast, I think it was in 2011, and even before that, Slam and Stand. When we started Slam and Stand, I think it was in 2008 or 2009. And when we were talking about that stuff, there wasn't as much. There was a lot of Lucha Libre news, but it wasn't as readily available like it is now. And with Lucha Underground and with WWE bringing in luchadors, and Ring of Honor bringing in guys, the indie scene having more lucha involvement, I think there's more room for a weekly Lucha Libre podcast. That's what we're doing with on MLW with Lucha Talk. if I did do, I mean, if I did this regularly, I think the one thing people are gonna be like, why would you do this regularly on a weekly basis? The one thing, Lucha Talk has different. There's two more people doing that show, so there's more opinions added to it. It's giving you their opinions. There's more. Everybody provides what they want to talk about. Whereas this show, it's more about stuff I want to talk about. Kurt wants to talk about. Maybe we, like I was saying, there's some stuff that I'll tell you, like there's sometimes stuff that I want to talk about that it would be a little more complicated to talk about on Lucha Talk because it's a newer audience. And I don't think they want to know about stuff that some of us remember from like 1999 or 2000, stuff like that. Whereas here on this podcast, I could probably bring up stuff like about Shocker doing the guapos and stuff like that, or the guerreros del infierno, stuff like that. And it wouldn't be as uncommon for the listeners for this show. So like I said, next podcast will be next week. I think we'll have Kurt on. Hopefully by then we'll have more of an idea of what I want to do with the History podcast. I've already talked to Kurt about it. He's up for it. I'm planning on doing something for the podcast as well once we decide to do it. Yeah, so next week we'll have another podcast. Hopefully hopefully this upcoming Friday show will be good. And I'll actually watch the Tuesday show, so we'll definitely have something to talk about. I'm also like, I did this podcast on a Thursday, so I was able to talk about Informa and all this other stuff. So although this week Informa had nothing besides the stuff that they talked about in the press conference, so hopefully like every week we can I'll do this show at this time. Just like I was saying, stay tuned next week. We'll have more news on what we're planning on doing with this podcast that we're planning on doing. And again, hopefully today, within a few hours, I will hopefully be celebrating a victory by the Los Angeles Dodgers. If not, I will probably be... I won't be crying because as much as I like baseball, I don't really like... It's not as... I'm more of a Laker fan, a basketball fan. So... the losses don't bug me as much as they do when it comes to the Lakers. And even that nowadays, it doesn't bug me as much. But hopefully the Dodgers will win and we will face the Cubs. I don't think the Dodgers or the Nationals have much of a shot against the Cubs, to be honest with you. And you know, that's even with the pit, even with I don't know, I don't like their odds. But hopefully the Dodgers will win, and we'll be talking about next week. We'll be talking about we'll be celebrating a Dodger victory. Actually, by the next podcast, I'll probably be celebrating a loss because I think the next series will start before the next podcast. So thanks again for listening. Talk to you next week.